Hello and welcome to another Thulian Transmissions chat. This one's one of our Fuel to the Fire series where we don't have any real special topic planned necessarily. We do have a broader topic that we're going to kind of do a deep dive into. And today we're down a couple. I think we have Dagus is taking a couple shows off. And Will of R might be coming on in a little bit, but for now, we have a special guest, Promethean Persona, and the topic of tonight's show is leadership, which is an incredibly important topic, especially in the vein that we like to use the word. And just to start it off here, I wanted to define what it means to lead. I looked through a few definitions. The basic concept is to be in charge of or command something, to organize and direct it, to be the principal player in a group, to set something in motion, to begin something. And with that definition, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. Just want to lay the groundwork with the definition to start. But yeah, that's what the show is about tonight. And without further ado, let me introduce Promethean Persona.
Hello everybody, and hope you're all having a great evening.
Well, I definitely am. Yeah, so leadership. Why do you think do you think we have a problem with leadership in modern era?
The problem is lack of it. The problem is definitely lack of leadership, misconceptions about leadership, misuse of leadership, and speaking to what affects us, speaking to what we care about, the Eurosphere, the existence, excelling, and evolution of the European peoples, wherever they may be. We lack leadership. We have lacked true, genuine, strong leadership for a long time. Without leadership, we will go nowhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, one could simply say that. I mean, poor leadership is essentially no leadership. If you're not directing, if you're not actively guiding, if you're not beginning or being the impetus behind something, that really fails. I mean, we can take some pretty contemporary examples, and I don't mean to get into politics too much, but just look at where we stand in the West right now, specifically in the USA. I don't think anyone would ever say that Donald Trump is any kind of real leader, or nor does he enact any type of leadership skills in the United States. And you see this pretty much everywhere, right?
You see it everywhere, yeah. And speaking of Trump, the traitor, which is what he is, and that should be his name for all time, because that's what he is. He's a traitor. He is such a clown. And you can judge people by the leaders that they follow. And following him is a sign that people are so deprived and their ideas of what a leader is are so distorted that not only are we lacking leaders, we are also lacking people who are good followers, and good followers in the sense of being able to recognize a leader. For a leader to emerge from, for us, what we care about, the Eurosphere, we need people who can recognize a good leader, who can move a good leader up the ranks. But Europeans no longer recognize what a good leader is.
Yeah, which is sad. I mean, what do we see as leadership in today's quote unquote leadership? Obviously, I would never call this, I mean, any type of leadership that I would follow. But I mean, McDonald's is a great leader for speaking out the silenced voices of Black Lives Matter. Um, Jared Kushner is a good leader for the United States right now. You know, I'm saying good. I'm just saying he is basically being the leader. Um, and it's really you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. I think not only is it something that's needed. I mean, we have a lot of people that speak of a direction. I'm not saying there's no people acting as leaders, but to be that starting force and to be that drive and to guide and to uplift our people, I think this is part of the main thing. Is bringing everybody up with you. You're not the only one rising. You're bringing everyone up with you. Is that is that something you've thought about too? Like, I mean, we have a lot of direction in the pro white sphere, but like, who's actually uplifting everybody?
Mm, that is the role of a leader. The role of a leader is to bring others up. It's to be that rising tide that lifts all boats. It's to be an inspiration. A leader is a catalyst for evolution of himself, of his people, and we are throughout our lives leaders in many different contexts. For a man, he must be a leader to his woman, he must be a leader to his family. If you are an older brother, you want to be a leader as well. All throughout our lives, we will have different opportunities and we can decide to be leaders or to be followers. Follower often does have a negative connotation. And in the Eurosphere, we have a lot of people who want to be autonomous, they want to be sovereign. So if you think that being a follower has a negative connotation, re examine what a follower is, but also don't get too far away from your distaste of following. I think there's something key and something important there because you should want to lead if you feel that natural inclination, especially if you're one of those Europeans who has a quote unquote authority defiance disorder. Then definitely embrace that side of you. Definitely embrace that side of you that says, I want to lead. I always want to be in charge of myself. I don't want to be told what to do because you're likely someone who doesn't want to lead through authority, but wants to lead through merit, wants to lead through excellence. You want to lead because you're great in this field or that area, or you've got the kind of skills that a leader should have. You want to organize people, you want to inspire people, you want to rally them to our cause, to live by the values that we live by. And ultimately, one of the key qualities of a leader is that leaders do the things that others talk about.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and we're, you know, obviously we've done shows on master-slave dialectic and, um, you know, new man, let's just say. And I have nothing against obviously everybody pursuing a master status within the right. And in fact, that's what I think all of us should be doing is just picking ourselves up more and more and becoming better and better at whatever skills that we find ourselves geared to or interested in, and then leading in those fields. I mean, I think it's like a never ending kind of position to be in leadership. You're always pushing, you're always moving, you're always bringing everybody up around you with you. It's like it's an ongoing cycle. Um, but one thing you mentioned you had some notes or some. I think we discussed a little bit before the show some of those topics. Do you want to kind of hit on those now?
Yeah, certainly. And really quick, there's someone in the private chat So definitely have a look at that.
Oh,
Um,
good, good. I will.
mhm. um, yeah, what we were discussing earlier before the show were some of the evolutionary um, history and how that connects to leadership. What traits are people looking for in leaders? What traits have we selected for in leaders? And some of those traits are the more obvious things that people can see. And then there are also the less obvious traits of leadership that someone would have to either contemplate for a while or study to get a better grasp of. But just starting with the more common ones, we all recognize that people want someone who isn't too young, right? Um, you don't have to be old to be wise, but we also recognize that the older you are, the higher the chance is for you to have more wisdom through personal mistakes, through experience, and of course, more opportunities to lead people, more opportunities to interact with the very people that you are leading. So we naturally associate young age with inexperience. So you want someone who's not too young. And then you also want someone who's not too old.
So not too young and not too old, but someone with experience, lived experience, and someone who has the energy and the drive to accomplish those goals.
Precisely, precisely. Someone who's not, because in our past, and I would argue we can still say this, um, regardless of how far into civilization we are, we want and we need someone who is capable of fighting, someone who is capable of uh, leading into combat. One of the primary roles of leaders would have been that, would have been leading men in combat. So it can't be someone who's too young, but it can't be someone who's too old either.
And
They need
crap,
to
if they're
be
leading
able
someone
to.
in combat, I mean, I reckon that they have to be somewhat physically fit, or I mean, that's, I mean, when you look at our history, I mean, those leaders that led those great wars, those wars that history has talked about for ages, they're not only depicted by the storytellers, but the artists as being, the peak of physique, let's just say. And also, before we carry on, I just want to say, hey, welcome, Will. Good to have you here.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome, Will.
But yeah, I mean, exactly to your point. Um, it's basically, you don't want. I mean, if we all saw like a scrawny 4'7" uh, individual, would that denote leadership? Would that be perceived as a leader to a group of individuals that, uh, let's just say, strive to be more than that?
Mm. Yeah. So in terms of age and in terms of physical fitness, those are two are very, very obvious. We want someone who is representative of the optimal scenario in that case. Um, Also being tall, and although height um, will not be the sole determining factor in your ability to win a fight, height does play into things like intimidation. Uh, Height plays into perception, how we perceive people. So wanting taller leaders, that's that's also something that people go for. Um, then, of course, a little bit outside of the the purely looks or physical traits, pro-social skills. People are looking for a leader who can understand their concerns, who will listen to their concerns. Listening skills are a major part of leadership. They want a leader who is alpha, who is really masculine, uh, who won't hesitate to make decisions, who will be decisive. But then that leader must also be caring. He can't be uncaring. He can't be the kind of masculine that is only in it for himself. He must be in it for others. He must have their best interests in mind. There's that story, and when it comes to history, who can really say what's 100% fact or 100% fiction? But there's value in the story, whether it's real or not. The story of Alexander, and when his men were threatening mutiny, and I speak of Alexander the Great, when they threatened mutiny, his response was to unclothe himself, be naked before them, show them the front of his body, and say that if any of them had bled more than he has, that he will acknowledge their exhaustion, because the mutiny was because they were so exhausted uh, after so many conquests, after so much war. If
Yeah,
they had
that's
bled, if they had bled and they had suffered more than he had, that he would acknowledge their exhaustion and they could go home. And after that, the talk of mutiny was over because none of them had sacrificed or bled for them as much as he had. In a way, he was shaming them, but also he was showing why he was the leader, why he deserved to be the leader, why he was their king.
yeah, and actually, I've heard similar stories from generals in ancient Rome, and uh, just anecdotal stories from different historical battles that I've read about. And that's kind of the mark of a real leader in my eyes, someone who continues and someone who leads. I mean, we always hear the old saw, lead by example. What does that mean? I mean, he's showing them his cuts, he's showing them his wounds, he's showing them exactly. I mean, he laid it all bare in this story, and he's saying, if I'm not tired, uh, why should you be? Look at
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
That's pretty powerful, actually.
It is the power of leaders is in going above and beyond. The power of leaders is when exhaustion wraps herself around you and whispers in your ear to go lay by her side. The power of leaders is in saying no. It's in taking that extra step and in being the example. There's a really good quote by someone who I think is a true leader, um, who understands the spirit of leadership in our modern times, and that is where this is not someone who I think is white positive. He doesn't really give any hints of being white positive, but definitely someone who has the spirit of a European man. And he goes by the name Bo Eason. You can check out his stuff here on YouTube, actually, and you'll find a lot of great videos on leadership. And he has a great quote: leaders don't tell you what to do, leaders do it. They are the example of leadership. And then you do what the leader does. That's true leadership.
I mean, that's pretty potent message. I mean, and I've I'm totally something that I can get behind. I mean, to lead, you just do it, and then other
Mhm.
people follow. It's that's why that part of that definition at the beginning was so impactful. Was it's the start, it's the beginning, it's the forward momentum, it's the drive, it's the effect, it's the cause.
Mm.
And I think that's
Mhm.
pretty. I mean, those are all great. I think those are all perfect summations of what a leader is and what he should do.
Yeah, it's a very simple quote, and but it's it's both as simple as that, but what is simple isn't without complexity. And you really struck at the core of one of the prerequisites to leadership, and that is being the cause, the initiator. A leader is an initiator. And leaders always, to keep an eye out for leaders do more than what they ask of those that they are leading. If I'm leading you, I will do more than what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah, and I forgot exactly where I read this, but I think there's kind of a not a maritime law, but a maritime axiom, I guess, or a maxim that a leader won't ask you to do anything that he is not ready, willing, and able to do himself.
Mm, that's a beautiful one. That has the kind of precision that I simply adore. Yeah.
And it's quite right. Like if I was leading, if I was telling, well, not telling people, but leading people, why would I have them do the things that I'm not willing to do myself? Would they follow me if they knew that was not the case? No, I don't think so.
They wouldn't follow you. Uh, you would be a faux leader, and you would have none of the leadership capital to call yourself a leader. Leadership has to be demonstrated. You can't just talk. You can't just talk it. It has to be demonstrated. Leadership is also a great initiation test. There's uh, a burden of performance to leadership, and men have been selected for leadership in a way that women simply have not. So, for all of our young men, what the Eurosphere needs the most, what our people need the most, what you need the most, what our women need the most, and what our children need the most is leadership. And if you undertake that, if you place that weight upon yourself and you train to reach a high level of mastery in the field of leadership, I don't think you'll ever regret it.
Yeah, well said. I mean, and 100%. There's a topic that we you brought up before the show started, and I forgot what the exact term was, but it's I guess the concept was about other people vouching for you. I guess that would be a good summation. Do you have some? Do you remember what we were talking about on that front?
Yes, you brought up social proof, and we were discussing a bit. Uh,
Yeah, the concept of social proof. What was it before I mentioned it as? So in marketing, I'll just briefly describe it. It's social proof in marketing is um, a group of individuals who marketers use or companies use to show that they are vouched for, that they are they should be picked among all of the other ones that all the other companies or all the other service providers or all the other people that offer a similar uh, outcome that you're looking for, a product that you're looking for. And in social proof in marketing is basically these people saying that this is why I chose him. This is why I chose this product. This is what reviews are actually. They're social proof. This is what testimonials are. That's social proof. This is what in marketing everyone's hungry for, because it really, I think the stat is 85%. And I'm just going to nerd out real quick. 85% of people look at a review or a testimonial or other form of social proof, as much as they would consider a personal review or personal recommendation from their own family members.
Mm.
So it's a powerful, powerful thing.
Yeah, and how that social proof comes about is what got us talking about social proof, and that was the emergence of leaders. And how leaders emerge is important toward that social proof. And to have that social proof, you must be part of the group. The leaders who have the highest chance of success emerge from the group. They are not imposed upon the group.
Right, that's the concept that we're talking about. I love that. I mean, I think we were talking about, imagine just someone saying, some authority figure, someone saying, and you can parallel this with politics or with governments, as much as your imagination can withstand, but some rando from the outside saying, this is your leader now, you must follow that, as opposed to this being from within, an organic, like an organic drive, an organic leader.
Precisely. The the organic leadership versus the GMO leadership versus the artificial leadership.
Yeah, I like that. The GMO leadership, it's
G-
infused with all kinds of hormones, and they're just like, look, this is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with this.
There's nothing wrong with the impossible leadership burger.
It's not going to make you grow man boobs or anything like that. Trust the plan, guys. It's exactly what you're looking for.
Just yeah, to ask someone, hey, trust this guy you've never heard of. He's gonna lead you. In our spheres, in the Eurosphere, how many times have we seen that, and where does that lead? When we don't know someone, or we don't even hear whispers of someone um, that has passed through our circles, but then all of a sudden they are being talked about as a leader. That has a bitter taste in your mouth, in your brain, in in the most ancient parts of your brain. There's something that says, "Oh, this is dangerous." And
Yeah, what's the modern rendition of the modern terminology would be astroturfed, right? Completely fake, implanted, and nothing organic about it. There is not an organic life form in 10 square miles, or 10-mile radius of this thing.
yeah, precisely. And really quick, check the private chat. Um, yeah, something tells you this is dangerous because you have no familiarity with this person. You did not interact with them. You didn't see them at their best or at their worst. You didn't spend time with them. And also, leaders, leadership, leadership goes wrong when the leader starts to perceive himself as superior to those that he leads rather than being one among them. Because leadership is a skill, but it doesn't make you superior to others. It just so happens that you, as a leader, are great at this skill of leadership, which some people might have more predisposition to than others, but that doesn't stop anyone from mastering leadership skills. Everyone who has certain prerequisites, intelligence, will to do so, etc., can improve their leadership skills. Leadership doesn't make you better than those that you're leading, when the leader thinks himself superior to those that he's leading, he stops walking among them. He stops being one of them. Suspicion starts to come in. Suspicion starts to be the ground upon which the leader walks. And every time the people hear his footsteps, they're beginning to hear the footsteps of a stranger, not a brother. And that's always dangerous. So you want a leader to emerge from the group, to rise organically from the group, to be someone that you have spoken to, someone you've seen struggle, someone you've seen sweat, someone you've seen cry out in pain, someone you've seen experience loss, someone you've seen struggle, someone that you've seen fight resistance and come out stronger in the end, someone you've seen stand up for others, someone you've seen righteous indignation in, righteous anger, fury in defense of his people. You never want a leader to be imposed upon you. There are lower chances of success. That doesn't mean that a leader can't come from the outside and do his best to ingratiate himself and really earn the trust of his people, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. Organic leaders have higher chance of success.
Yeah, 100%. And just to touch on that point again, just as we brought it before, it's part of being a leader is like being willing and able to do anything that you're leading people to do yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not that, people are going to recognize it. If you're just saying do this, well, you're sitting in you're sitting pretty in your castle or whatever, wherever the hell you are, then obviously people are going to be like, well, I mean, I can do this, but like, there's not really any impetus behind doing so. There's no leading force that is driving me to do this thing. And that's why a lot of kings and a lot of royalties and a lot of monarchs have fallen in the past, because they weren't willing and able to do exactly what they were telling their people to do.
Precisely. They were faux leaders. They in many ways wanted to lead through an expectation. And you can't lead through an expectation. You can't lead by expecting others to follow. You can't just say, I'm the leader because you're meant to follow. Try that with women. And women are a good example of this because they're going to be really honest and really upfront about this. But try that with a woman next time. You should do what I say because I'm the man. You've already lost. You've already lost. Anytime you have to tell them because I'm this, it's very much like when a parent tells his kid because I'm your father. What kind of a nonsensical, weak, pathetic excuse, like justification, is that? It's pathetic. You would
It's
never.
false imposed authority. Like there's no reason for that woman to say or to agree with what you do because you said I am the man. There's
Hey,
no
can you
reason
guys hear
for
me?
that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Welcome.
What's up?
Just doing the old impromptu on leadership. Our buddy Promethean has a lot of good notes, and he thought of the topic.
Nice. Yeah, I was waiting in the back room for like 10 minutes.
Well,
Just listening to you guys.
Boomer Grizz strikes again.
When I saw that, I thought, damn, no, god damn it, how could I not see that? I must say, I take responsibility for that too because I was distracted in the live comments. So
Yeah,
apologies
no
for that.
worries. Yeah, no worries. But yeah, no, it's good to talk to you guys. We've been having some good conversations the last couple of days off stream.
Yeah,
Oh, totally. Hours of them.
Yeah, this
And
concept that kind of touches on what you guys are talking about is something that we talked about the other night with Lucis about, leadership. It's, what was it, aristocracy through meritocracy is what I said. As it was the concept that I kind of came up with, and I mean, I didn't invent the concept, but yeah, it kind of touches on what you guys are saying of sort of this merit-based system of leaders getting into positions of power through merit and not simply by, blood right or by imposition, rather.
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely it. That's a really good point. Yeah, leadership, you can't lead through expectation. You can't lead through expecting people to follow you. The expectation isn't that for others, you can't expect that others will follow you. They're expecting that you're going to lead. That's the expectation. The burden of performance is not on them. The burden of performance is on you. And that's why I think, well, for evolutionary reasons, because as mentioned before, men were selected for leadership in a way that women were not. But the other thing that links men and leadership so closely is that because men have a burden of performance and leaders have a burden of performance. Um, for a long time, when people have been searching for the perspective of leaders, of kings, of aristocrats, of rulers, one of the things that always comes up, the sword of Damocles example is, yeah, you try it. You think it's so easy. You think it's just power. You try having this sword dangling above you. Try having the burden of performance, the weight, the threats, the enemies that you deal with, the threats from even among your own people. Who knows who among you is jealous, envious, or who among you is a traitor that wants to usurp you, or who wants your position. So it's not all roses and wine and leisure and power. It comes with a cost. It comes with a burden of performance.
exactly, goes along with the whole organic nature of it, doesn't it, as well? You're you're not expecting anyone to necessarily follow you when you start something. When you start something, and then all of a sudden you turn around and there's a whole group of people behind you, that's when you know you're a leader. You're not. This is that's the organic approach. That's not the I'm going to pay $1 billion for people to follow this one thing. That's
You
the
sure that's
inorganic.
just not? You sure that's just not internet autism? When you look behind you, you see a bunch of. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that also could be part of it, but I mean, every single major event that's happened in human history has been led by a single person when it boils down to it. And it's
Yeah,
that.
one of our favorite models to use is Arminius. If we're going back in the day.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and also Vercingetorix. There's a lot of historical figures, but Arminius, I mean, went to his tribe, and even his father was like, "Hey, no, 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 no. We had a good thing going. I don't want you to ruin it." And he even tried to stop it, but Arminius said, "This is how it's going to be. I'm doing this. Um, Come along," and they did, and that was one of the single largest defeats the Empire of Rome has ever experienced. It's just the start of one man saying, "I'm not going to allow my people to be subjugated anymore." It was just one man saying, "This is done. I'm done. I'm going to do something." He was the start, and that was part of the definition that we were talking about at the start for leaders: the beginning of something, the impetus, the driving force, the thing that gets everything else in motion. Um, so yeah, I think that's a really important concept.
That point of leaders go first. This is also something that people recognize. People follow people who go first. they almost assume almost instantly that that person is the leader. Even if you're going in a wrong direction, if you go first, they're going to follow you. And we're always battling between our leader instinct, if you will, and our follower instinct. But people definitely follow people who go first. That is a leadership trait, is going first, being the initiator, being that self-starter. That's definitely key. And Europeans need to cultivate that in themselves again.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a broad definition of leadership. You can be a leader of a community, you can be a leader of your family, you can be the leader of a group of individuals. It just requires one thing, and that's to start it, to begin, to. It's just so simple, but to actually put the work into action.
Yep, right back into action. There's more than enough to do, and there hasn't been a fire. There hasn't been an almost agitation, a little bit of anxiety. There hasn't been a sense of urgency in our sphere for a very, very long time. Things only get worse and worse. Our people are only attacked more and more. We are only entering into further degeneracy, into greater decay. We're only experiencing more extreme European erasure. Yet the other side that should match that, the sense of urgency, the urgency, the sense of action, the sense of, all right, just get something started, just go, just act, move, and move soon. That isn't there. What's there is a sense of hesitation. Where are the men that can jump? Where are the men that can leap? Where are the men that can charge ahead? Where are the chariot riders, if you will? Very few of them in the Eurosphere. Because our men are still worried. Our men are still worried about the loss of this or the loss of that. But the thing is, don't worry about loss, because if you don't act, if you don't charge ahead, they're going to take everything from you. So in a way, the safest thing you can do is go all in. That is the safest thing we can do, is go all in and start to take more and more and more action. And if we all do that, not only will this move ahead a lot quicker, but we will put an end to it a lot faster. Not that the ultimate fight for European well-being will end. That's an eternal fight. That's an eternal war. But the victimization of our people, we can put an end to that real quick if we charge ahead. If
Exactly.
we decide to go first.
Exactly, and I mean, I'm not gonna do the Washer Penis Peterson bit, but it does kind of start with the responsibility of self and extends outward. It really does, and that sounds like a meme, but you're not going to be a leader of anything if you sit on your ass eating Cheetos and Doritos and watching Netflix and going online and spurging for an hour and a half or 3 hours or 5 hours, depending on your daily routine of spurging. Like that's not leadership. That's not leadership. But it does start locally, and it moves outwards in a broader and broader sphere. The more responsibility you pick up as a leader. I mean, I've experienced this firsthand, just in my own close knit circle of friends and family. When shit, when stuff started happening with COVID and BLM and things like this, people were coming to me for advice. People were coming to me to asking me, like, I mean, you read this in the cards, like, what are you doing? What should we do? And I'll give them the same advice. I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, I mean, it starts locally and it extends outwards in a compounding measure in a snowball effect.
Yeah, and that snowball effect is what people who are leaders start to experience. Is they look back and, like you said, they see that there's a bunch of people following them, and that takes courage. That does take courage, which is another trait of leadership, is courage. To be the first takes courage. Again, so many of the leadership traits align perfectly with the masculine virtues: courage, strength, mastery, honor. Those are prerequisites to leadership. Those are definitely must-haves.
Mm-hmm.
And
so just to expound on that, what are some of those masculine traits?
well, the masculine virtues, the virtues that all men need before all others, would be, I would say, in order. The primary one is courage. Courage is the fire that begins the process of forging all of the other virtues.
And the concept of courage goes directly in line with my concept of confronting something. And if you boil down the etymology of confront, it's to face something exactly as it is, no matter how big and scary it is, without hesitation, without backing down, without flinching, without avoiding that thing.
Yeah, precisely. And looking at things, confronting things, is the only way that you can guide people. Because if you don't have that ability for confrontation, there are going to be things that you're going to be hiding from yourself, or things that you're going to be denying, or things that you're going to try to play down.
And there's mechanisms that I've seen in contemporary, even on our side, some contemporary content creators and things like that. They'll use methods of avoidance without actually directly saying they're avoiding the thing. Like, one of them is irony, one of them is nihilism, one of them is defeatism, one of them is just taking the black pill as is. Let's just say that these are all methods of non-confront, of not being courageous, of lacking courage. To be honest, I think irony is one of the most cowardly ways to ignore what's happening right now.
It is. It is. It's how a lot of our guys try to hide from the situation that we're in, which is I think it's the worst situation that the European peoples have ever been in. This is the worst it has ever
And
been.
I talked to some boomers. I'm in some boomer clans. I'm probably a boomer myself. I'm not going to dox my age, but I'm relatively young. But let's just say I've taken on the clothing of the boomer because it's very comfortable. I just got to tell you, they wear some really comfortable clothes. But I interact with a lot of booms, And a lot of booms are saying in their blah blah years of life, from 55 to 75 or whatever a boomer is, they'll even say this is the most, and they'll use this term. This is the most accelerated I've ever seen in X country, or in my country, or my community, or in politics, or whatever other term they want to use. But it's the fastest, it's the most change, it's the most significant that they've ever seen in their entire long lives. So that is significant, because these guys also lived through 1965 and the civil rights movement.
I like that better, the booms. Yeah, this is definitely the worst that it's ever been. But when it's this bad, leadership means that you see an opportunity. When it's this bad, leadership means you rise to the occasion. And when your people are on the floor, on their knees,
Literally,
and
by the way. Literally.
literally, goddamn, literally, all of a sudden, an anti-white white puts his knee on a non-white anti-white, and then you got to get on your knees.
Well, the whole Western world had to get on their knees for one criminal who died of a heart attack from overdosing on drugs.
Yeah, a non-white criminal.
And that's the exact definition of an astroturfed leader you could possibly think of. This guy's thought of as a saint. It's a 100% false leader. I mean, if you pick that guy as your leader, God, oh man, God's help you, because that's pathetic.
Yeah, he's a leader, quote unquote leader, in the sense that Christ also is the kind of victim leader.
The martyr for the sake of virtue.
Yeah, the idea of the meek shall inherit the earth, and doesn't get more meek than that. Doesn't get more meek than Christianity.
I knew that would be talked about. Yeah, I mean,
Snake Eyes is asking in chat, is Grizzly hitting the pipe?
What?
Or the vape?
Oh no!
No, dude, that's a joint. He's hitting a joint.
I'm not hitting a joint or a vape.
He likes to toke it up late at night during the streams.
That's just probably my mic, to be honest.
Oh, I'm just joking.
Yeah, but I mean, talk about an astroturf leader, specifically in Europe. I mean, who better of an example can you get than old JC himself?
Yeah, precisely. It's the victim leadership being led by someone who is portrayed as the ultimate victim. That's no leadership at all. Leadership is strength. It's you want to be led by the strong. And so courage is the virtue that I would say makes the other masculine virtues possible. So the others would be strength, mastery, and honor. Because even if you're not strong at the moment, well, it's going to take courage for you to get stronger. And there's no point in being a ripped, heavy-weighted. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no point in having the physicality of a demigod and the courage of a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick too, we have a top Spurg in chat, online complainer. I think I might have a clue who that is, but I'll keep that to myself. But he's doing a good job.
Yeah, I find his work quite interesting. His breakdown, especially when it comes to crypsis and matters of this kind. These are matters that have interested me for a long time, that I've been studying for quite a long time.
Well, I
So
know you. I know you a little bit better than the chat does. I know your work into crypsis and into. I mean, we've covered topics like meme pathogens that No White Guilt Jason brings up on his show as well, and various forms of that. I don't know if you want to get into that or not.
well, if it naturally comes up through our discussion, then we can get into that. But yeah, so those masculine virtues are prerequisites and they
Yeah,
align perfectly
I
with
would say.
leadership.
Yeah, I would say one of the underlying ones as well, just to add to what you said, and I totally agree with those, is there has to be an underlying survival drive as well, I think, for the
Hmm.
truest of leaders throughout history.
Hmm.
One that has in its heart and in its root that of the survival of not just yourself and your family, but everybody around you, all your people, your kin. I think with that creates the strongest leader imaginable because it's no longer on the basis of I hate or I want to destroy. It's on the basis of love, which I think is one of the strongest impetuses, even above hate, because it requires, as we discussed before the show, it requires love of your own people before you can even hate, because hate is a symptom of that which threatens what you love.
Precisely. In the modern day, the word love is one of the most corrupt, misunderstood, overused words in the English language. And the irony and just the lack of seriousness of this modern anti-European decadent age leads us to have a, quite frankly, a pathetic um, perception of love, an unserious perception of love. So if you say something like "lead with love," you already know what people are going to say. Oh, that's so gay, bro. Like that sounds so
Or they're
gay.
going to say, "Oh yeah, totally. Let's just lead with love. Yes, let's give billions of dollars to Israel, the Congo, South, all of Africa, South America, everyone that's not European. Yes, that's love."
Yeah, precisely. Their anti-European definition of love. Yeah, so it's either new age bullshit or it's irony posting and it's anti-seriousness of haha, that's so
I
gay.
just want to get into anti-seriousness and irony. It's cowardly. If you
Hmm.
do it to escape, then you have less use than the horse that I will ride in to battle on. Just to meme real quick, use my own little form of irony, but it is really useless. It's defeatist. It's nihilistic. It's garbage. Stop doing it, guys. Get serious, because if you don't now, there's not going to be another opportunity.
Yeah, there will not be another opportunity. And what you said is a brilliant point because survival makes leadership take on that realm of seriousness that you're not going to get otherwise. When it's dealing with survival, it doesn't get any more serious than that. And leaders need to have that capacity. Leaders need to have the capacity for absolute seriousness, to take things on with a deadly focus, the same focus that you would expect uh, out of a hawk that knows that that final dive may well be the distinction between its survival and its death.
Or a lion in the Great Plains of Africa who has just enough energy left to pursue his prey, and if he misses that one chance, he will starve and succumb.
Precisely. It is the precise um, raw animal instinct and biological drive to survive that heightens leadership. It raises necessity. it raises performance necessity. And only someone who can see things seriously and be serious and be seriously invested in the survival, the excelling, and the evolution of his people can make the best leader.
Because that is at the forefront of what's going on. This is a survival imperative. Every other subclass of people on this planet has a leader or an advocacy group or a survival message. We happen to be the only group on this planet that doesn't. That's quote unquote not allowed to have that. And then anyone not thinking about survival as the main end and as the only goal and as the driving force and the love of its own people, which by the way equates to, if you really break it down, really the future survival of the entire world. And I'm not being hyperbolic. If we did not exist, what hope do you think the rest of the world has? I mean, that might sound a little bit supremacist, but I've thought about it at great lengths, and I can't come to another outcome other than complete annihilation if we were to fail.
It's purely an objective assessment that non-Europeans who are on the right side of their IQ, so to speak, right side of the bell curve, it's something they have come to realize as well. We're constantly told that if Europeans survive, if we care about our survival, if we care about our excellence and our evolution, that the world will suffer, or that especially non-Europeans will suffer, that they will come under harm. That's a lie. That's an anti-European lie, an anti-European meme pathogen.
And in fact, objectively, the opposite is true. Objectively, the opposite is true.
Objectively, the opposite is true. Anyone, including those in our circles, who tell you that non-Europeans or the world is going to suffer through our benefit are infected with a meme pathogen. The opposite is true. And here's the meme curative. White well-being leads to worldwide well-being. Or put another way, the world's well-being is dependent on white well-being. The world needs us. That is a fact.
And here's the supremacist take of mine. We don't need the world. We need nature, but the world needs us. We are just in line with nature.
The world needs us. And this is not that meme pathogen of white man's burden, which I do consider a meme pathogen. It is not that. It is just a simple fact.
I think that came from a certain Abrahamic sect that said we must take care of and coddle the entire planet.
I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that. The idea that we must be looking out for others to our own detriment, that's a meme pathogen.
If you're the only group of people with a shirt, and the Bible says, thou must give the shirt off your own back for whoever doesn't, whatever. I don't know the quote. I actually read the Bible once. I don't care for it. I don't actually care for it. But if you're the only people that have shirts, you're the only people that are going to be shirtless. It's counterintuitive.
It is. It's nonsensical. And it also has its source in white guilt, because it is not a responsibility to care for non-Europeans. Not at all. Not at all.
And no one else, no other group even pretends to take on that burden. Not even pretends. Not even like as a meme. Not even ironically. They're like, oh, yeah. I mean, if Brazil is like, or if Mexico becomes like the world superpower, obviously we're going to take care of everybody else. No. No. The only burden that lies on is forced on even in and amongst all the hate we get for it is European man.
Yet no other group feels any sense of responsibility. No other group cares. There is no European positive or pro-European group, institute, organization led by non-Europeans. It doesn't exist, and I don't think it'll ever exist. No matter what, I don't think it's ever gonna exist, and neither should we expect it to exist. What we should expect is that our people focus on ourselves. How many among us have chosen to play leaders for non Europeans rather than be leaders for Europeans? That's another part. Being a leader means you are absolutely clear about who you are leading. In the same way that you cannot serve two masters, you cannot lead two groups.
Exactly, because each one has their own self-preservation, or should have their own self-preservation as the main goal. And I just saw in chat from one of my old friends who said, "Of course we're going to survive. We have endured much worse." And any amount of black pills will never outmatch that white pill. We are the most surviving group, and we have the strongest, to bring it back, the strongest leaders with the single most, I believe, ability to love. And when that's focused on our own, it is unstoppable.
Yet when we are leading with love, we will pull resources from ourselves. We will pull an adaptability that is at the core of the European evolutionary strategy.
There's been studies. Let me just, before I forget this, there's been studies in the past that I've actually seen. Sorry, I'm not going to quote them right now. If you want, maybe later. But hate as an impetus, as an impulse, as a driving mechanism, as a fruitful endeavor, far is inferior to love, and love in the truest sense. And love has at its heart the want and the affinity for your people and the desire for them to continue to exist.
Yeah, love is it's the highest driving force that a leader can have. Yeah, and that's going to lead us to adapt, and adaptability is at the core of our European evolutionary strategy. It's why I totally agree. We are going to survive. I don't have a single doubt that we are going to survive. I can already see victory well ahead into the future.
Even in and amongst the deepest shit that possibly could exist, we will survive. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. There's absolute confidence in our people because of who we are. And one of the things that has always defined Europeans is what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Exactly, it's the adaptive nature, and some people think about adaptation as the ability or the how to word this correctly. A lot of people think about adaptation as we adapt to the environment. Europeans are singularly different, whereupon we adapt the environment to us while maintaining natural recourse. It's a singular ability of our people. I can't even explain it with words right now. I hope some people understand what I'm saying. We have the singular ability to adapt the environment to us while being just one with nature, and nature being one with us. Oh man, I can do a whole show just on that topic, to be honest. Yeah, where were we? Leadership, something like that.
Something like that. um, yeah, and to survive, and ultimately beyond survival, because again, in the uh, tradition of leadership, we always want to do more than the people that we are leading, always want to do more than what we are asking others to do. We want to not simply survive, we want to evolve. This must be an evolutionary experience for our people. We must have not just the goal of, I want to survive or I want some ethno state. No, we must say, I want the eternal evolution of the European race, period. Nothing short of that.
Exactly. You know what I think Will brought up earlier. He's like, I didn't necessarily cry when Molyneux got deplatformed. There's many reasons that could be. One reason is that individualism is dead. He even said there's no more arguments to be made for it, and that's quite true. Being a lone wolf and sticking out for your own is not only, in my opinion, cowardly and defeatist. It is a disservice to everything that came before you to put you where you are right now. There is an untold amounts of blood, sweat, land fought for, ancestry given their lives for, to make you where you stand right now, where you sit, listening to this podcast, listening to this. That it's not. Should I be ashamed of my ancestors? It's would my ancestors be ashamed of me?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Precisely. Ask yourself.
Real quick, I was gonna say about the Molyneux thing. I do stand by that. By the way, I do think it's a good thing that he got deplatformed because fuck him. I mean, what would be the what would be the argument? What would be the argument for being sympathetic for that guy at all? I mean, he's Jewish anyways. Like, I don't understand why people would be upset about this.
I mean, I agree with you. I think shit. I celebrate the end of a mentality of individualism in this day and age. I celebrate it.
I don't even. I think it goes beyond that too. I think not only that aspect, but it also forces people to realize that even these kind of grifting gatekeepers aren't safe. Even if you water down your message, like these guys are, to try to disavow certain beliefs and ideologies and people more in our sphere, it's still not going to save them in the end. So that's why it's, I don't know. To me, trying to water down your message is to kill your message. If you water down your message, then your message is no longer what it began with. And a lot of people do this, and then it ends up killing their message in the process. So, yeah, I definitely look at that as a net positive for third position ideology, or even people who are along, more along the siege route. If they believe in that stuff as well, I think people like Manu getting their channels show it is not a bad thing at all. So that's my take on that.
Yep, one of Molyneux's issues was, and this is a term, because got to give credit where credit is due. That's only right. This is a term from Stephen Franson. Molyneux's main thing was ethnocentric edging. He wanted you. He used to make people believe that, hey, I'm on your side, and then back off, and then, hey, I'm on your side, and then back off, and hey, this one thing that hints at him being white positive, and then back off. And he was basically, what he was doing is he was milking you for money. That's all that he was doing. He was milking our people for money. He was a gatekeeper, and people said, oh, he was a poor gatekeeper. No. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was good at being a gatekeeper. He wanted you to think that he wasn't a gatekeeper. He wanted you to think that he knows more than he does, but he's constrained by the anti-white regime, which is why he can't reveal all of his cards. No, he is part of the anti-white regime. What he pushes is part of the anti-white regime. The deal with him also is the fact that, yes, it seems that he is non-European, let's put it that way, and so he's likely being a spectator and thinking, who's going to win at the end of this? Which horse should I bet on? The white horse or the anti-white horse? So no, he's getting a taste of what we've gotten a taste for. He didn't speak out when our people were getting censored. So as to his censorship, as to his means of survival, I totally agree with Will on this. Don't give a damn.
Yeah, sorry about that. Exactly right.
Grizz is starting to fall asleep.
No, I was actually doing dishes. But I totally
Doing dishes.
It's not for me. It's for someone much smaller than me. Let's just say that.
Did you end up barbecuing earlier or what?
I did. I did three grass-fed and grass-finished. And let me tell you guys, in the barbecue world, if it says grass-fed, it doesn't mean that they continued to feed the animal grass until it was slaughtered. Grass-fed and grass-finished means that leading up to slaughter, they continued to feed it grass. Grass-fed just means that they fed it grass most of their life, and then they fed it a bunch of grain to give fat on the body.
God freaking damn it. Nothing is untainted anymore.
Yeah.
Well, back onto the front for survival, because that's at the core of every individual and every group. For survival, we've always looked for leaders to have warrior characteristics, a capacity for violence, martial prowess, physical fitness. Speaking of men, we'd be looking for leaders who have higher testosterone, a more masculine face, powerful
Beard,
jaw,
a beard.
a beard. definitely a good beard. And we'd be looking for someone who can inspire, someone who can rally, someone who can ease our worries, someone who can take our anxieties and our fears and turn them into reassurance, to provide safety, to motivate us into action, someone who's charismatic, someone who's got pro-social skills, really. Someone who can, as we discussed, listen and take the concerns of the people. Someone who's capable of winning fights with external enemies, but also help to solve internal fights, internal disputes. And a leader who rises organically will be able to do this. He will know you. You will have spent time with him. And in our circles, and bringing it back to the Eurosphere.
Yeah, I would say that's the thing that you kind of see in our circles is so many people have ideas of how they see things going and how they want things to be. They kind of put their ego in front of the best interests of their own people. And once you do that, you're kind of taking away the whole point of what it is that what we're fighting for in the first place. kind of put your own ego and your own interests in front of the interests of your own folk and your own people.
Well, you know what it shows me is a total lack of an acknowledgement of your responsibility. You're basically so centered around yourself and what others think of you. Then I would question the love. I would question whether or not you actually had those same goals as me. And you know, there's a lot of people that have been saying something that I've been saying for a long time. I've been, you know, they quote a movement of sorts. And at this point, my definition of movement, and I'm going to define it now, ladies and gentlemen, well, mostly gentlemen, let's just be honest. My movement has at its heart the love and impetus and effort and push and drive to keep us alive and here and perpetuate and prevail and do everything possible to make sure not only that we survive, but our kids survive, but the entire history of our people, the entire glory of our past stays intact. If that's not at the root of it, that's not my movement.
Here's a little hint too. Christianity isn't going to save that. Christianity isn't going to be able to kind of cultivate and preserve our culture in the long run, especially in the direction it's going right now.
It ultimately is anti-European and has always been anti-European. Trying to use Christianity to defend Europeans is like calling up a pedophile to babysit your kids.
Ooh.
Another thing that I wanted to say too is that I think we're pretty much all in agreement on the Christian question here, but if we're kind of defining this quote unquote movement, or at least this kind of vision or ideology that we're adhering to or that we're perpetuating, we have to kind of turn our own gaze towards our own house first, being paganism, and analyzing that and figuring out a way that you can kind of make that
I would say my definition applies.
Hold on. I was going to say we got to find a way to make that tangible and realistic for your average person, because if you can't make that digestible to your average person, it's never going to be palpable for people.
No, I agree. I agree. I'm definitely I'm all for that mentality, and my definition still applies. If you have that at the forefront of your endeavors and you're willing to kind of set aside these at this point petty debates and differences, and squabble amongst different regions or subsects of paganism or even Christianity. I'll just say this:
it's gay, dude.
I don't think there's many Christians that will get on board with what I'm saying, but there are some.
Yeah,
what I'm saying is
this is for our circle.
In the broad spectrum, in the broad understanding of things, this is not the time. Yes, have your own glory and history and heritage and ancestry and even ethno heritage. Do so, but you have to be a part of the broader picture. If you're not, then you lose too. Everybody.
Well, I mean, I look at it as the same kind of concept as the whole Prussian socialist model, is that you're putting the greater good, the collective good, in front of your individual desires first. So if we're kind of taking that same concept and applying it to paganism, you're putting the adherence to a greater power, or a greater calling, or a greater mission than your own kind of regional differences that you see. So many, like, the autism is absolutely unbelievable. You see so many people arguing in the pagan spheres about, like, which region is this, and dialects, and just
I will
so
say
fucking autistic, dude.
Yeah, I will say it's incredibly important to have those regional survival goals, but in the broad spectrum of things, just as you said, these regional things are a far cry away from the forefront of my mind when I look at what's happening everywhere.
Well, so that's the thing too, is that what we're advocating for doesn't negate preserving each cultural heritage or belief, or linguistic history or anything like that. I mean, in fact, we're actually trying to preserve these differences. But when you put these small differences ahead of the bigger picture, and that's the survival of Europeans as a whole, then to me you're kind of an enemy of the movement if you're putting your own personal shit in front of actual survival at this point
Well,
like
I
that.
would say at least you're doing yourself a disservice. You know,
No,
you're
it's not just doing themselves; they're doing their people a disservice, which is a greater sin if we're going to use that word. It's a greater blasphemy to disservice your people than it is to disservice yourself if you're doing that.
yeah, and this is why I rail against bulldog nationalism in the UK or the IRA hating the English or the English having some well I don't know if this is true but it's the England like being like, oh, Denmark and Scandinavia, how dare you, and how dare you would have invaded me in fucking 1100 or 800 to 1100 AD, and like in the in the United States I hate Britain because 1776 and this is magic soil now, and whatever the differences are, I think it's fair to say that these things need to be pushed aside.
Yeah, and so much of it can only rise up because there's no direction. Someone was saying in the comments before, everyone has an idea, but there's nobody to be the director. Where is the guidance? And ultimately,
Well, there is some people working on some pretty interesting concepts and projects as of late that kind of answer a lot of these questions, in my opinion, and they're doing a good job at that. So, the whole the Arianism concept is definitely one to look into. I think that kind of gets to the point that we're all talking about here, is to put aside petty regionalistic differences for a greater good, a greater calling to preserve your own people.
Yeah, and I think Talia's doing good work on that on Telegram. And there's, I'm oh man, the Telegram groups that I'm in every single other region that also advocates for themselves, but they're also saying this the same strain. We need to all have each other's backs at this point. There's no doubt about that. There's no individuation that can happen at this point.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm all for each different ethnicity or ethnic group kind of preserving their own culture and history and stuff, being within the European kind of diaspora. But once you start seeing somebody who's advocating solely for that and preaching against everything else, then that's a problem, and I have seen that a lot.
Right.
They need to put that aside for the greater good in this. So
Right, and when peeling back to Promethean's subject on leadership, you be the impetus for the change, and you don't look back, and you don't need to look back. You don't need approval. You don't need to be like, oh, who's with me? Just do it. People will follow.
hey, by the way, we got a message from Dranger in chat. He says, "Hello, my Christian brothers. I can't hop on tonight because I'm eating and relaxing a bit before bed, but I'll try to make it on next week." So shout out to Dranger.
Yep.
He had his show earlier. It's really good. It's called Hate Lab. So if you're not subscribed to that, make sure to go check that out. Yeah, he said he's gonna come on next week though, so hopefully we'll get him on next time.
yeah, as it pertains to factions and fractionalizing and all of these matters, Jason Kuhn has a really good idea of the one master principle. And how are we going to unite all of these different leaders? And that is correct, leaders, not just a leader. Because if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, we would have been, for most of our evolutionary history, it's been tribal. And we function best, I would argue, in tribes. So you want many, many, many leaders for many, many different tribes. Well, how do we unite all of these leaders and their tribes? We
Well,
unite them under
see,
that one master principle, which is our European biospirit. and
Well,
under
Lusos,
spirit.
Yaki seemed to think that this kind of individuation of European tribes was actually what is partially led to our downfall in many ways, because we all stem from these sort of handful of main racial groups. Yet we've divided ourselves so drastically into these small little regional areas that we've gotten into so many different regional conflicts and wars with each other over like stupid petty shit. And this is kind of what one of his main critiques on nationalism was in Imperium. He talks about this, and I was even talking to Dagus earlier today, is if we kind of applied this Imperium concept that Yaki was talking about to beyond a material level into a metaphysical level, I think that is actually the key for pagans at least to saving themselves, because the direction that they're headed on right now is, in my opinion, from me looking at it, it's not good. And I don't see hardly any pagans in these circles addressing these problems. You see pagans in these circles and they talk like everything's fine and everything's just going to work itself out. And that to me, that's kind of like the same thing I see with Christians when it's like they're relying on the Bible and, oh, we're all going to go to heaven one day. I'm not saying pagans are doing that like in that same way, but you have to be proactive in history. You have to be an actor in the sense of being proactive in your communities. You have to be proactive in kind of putting forth your idea into the ethos, and putting your message out there and getting people to kind of believe what you believe. So
yeah, I would say with what Luso said is correct at the beginning. Tribalism is key. It's never going to go away. People want to preserve their own ethnic history and longevity. That's not going to go away. I never read Yaki, but I would disagree on the fact that you should not be tribal. I think the key principle behind that, especially in modernity, let's just say, and I'm bringing Nietzsche into this, I would say there has to be a commonality of goal right now more than ever, just like there was with Vercingetorix when he united the tribes, even though they weren't his tribes. He united tribes, and just as Arminius did, they were not his tribe.
Well, that's the key, though. You see right there, he united the tribes under one banner.
Exactly.
That's why he ended up winning. So therefore, they were no longer these singular tribes of kind of isolated tribal factions that were separate of this kind of monogamous collective. Once he put them together into a larger collective was when he started to see major victories.
Well, in history, we call that confederations, and usually that was a brief. Well, not always brief, but sometimes that was a brief reconciliation to the broader goal.
Well, the unifying glue, the thread that runs and unites all of these tribes and these European ethnic groups that will cause us to be able to celebrate our biodiversity and our differences will be the one thing that unites us all, which is the fact that we are one people, we have one European biospirit, and if we have that one master principle, which is our European biospirit, it will be so that European brother wars will be seen as a sin, even stronger than Christians see sin.
Well, I hope you're right, because I mean, like I said, if you look at the last two world wars, our biospirit wasn't enough to keep us from killing ourselves. And I mean, if you look at these different countries, hold on a second. I was going to say, during these great wars, I mean, the French and Germans looked at each other as completely different peoples. Like they saw themselves as having hardly any similarities at all. And I mean, genetically speaking, I mean, they're far more similar than most other people. Like it's not even close. But this is what I'm talking about. This is kind of getting back to Yaki's critique on nationalism, is it divided people up so densely into these small factions of people that had these different regional cultures and linguistics, to where they saw the Europeans as completely alien to them and their own cultures, and that's the issues that Europeans are so divided onto small things, and like you guys are saying, all it would take is this biospread, and that, like I said, I look at a lot of these other pagan circles, and a lot of them give shit to certain other individuals who I'm not gonna get into it all right now, but it's like, oh, they can't be Teutonic because this guy's half Italian and this guy's got 30% Slav. It's the most autistic, retarded shit I've ever heard. Like
Well,
it
I'll
makes me want to
just
it makes me want to smack people through the screen when I hear that type of stuff, because that's how retarded it sounds.
yeah, I'll just reiterate my point. You're never gonna give up that ethnic tribalism. You're never gonna do that. That doesn't mean you can't pursue a broader activity or a goal. That doesn't mean that, but you're never gonna give up that thing. Some people
Well,
have that
this is
even more so than others. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be willing to unite under one banner.
Well, this is the thing too. Is like I said, me advocating for this more of a collective form of paganism does not negate the distinct tribal cultures or histories or spiritual practices. In fact, I think the only way to preserve this in the long run is through this kind of collective, united, kind of a pagan coalition, so to speak. Because if you don't have some uniting factor that actually unites people instead of separates them, which people can say that it's, pagans are all united all they want, but we all know that that's just not the case. We know that's not true. So unless we
Well,
find a way to do that, it's like the whole concept of hang together, hang separately. This is what is going to end up happening to us. We'll get outbred, we'll get conquered, and people want to just larp
well,
off into the woods in their little tribal groups. I mean, that's
that's.
fine. That's going to get you. That's
I
going to
mean,
get you genocided and
I,
extinct
I
faster, and that's just the facts.
yeah, I think you might be accelerating that point. That's not something I agree with, and I don't think many people with. I think well, here's my thing. Single stick break easy, group of stick don't break.
Yes, exactly. I agree. That's my point.
Together we can be a mighty faggot.
That's exactly the point that you're basically making. My point is, you get all these different ethnic European and pagan tribes, and you unite them into one, bundle of sticks. It's going to be a lot harder to break than one fucking stick whose purity
Yes.
spiraling over like some
My
guy
only
who's 20% Baltic, or like, it's just fucking autistic.
my only
retarded
point is those sticks are still going to remain sticks even in that group, and that's what I advocate for.
Well, like I said, I'm not trying to water down people's cultures in the sense of erasure. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to like mix Southern Italians with like fucking Norwegians, or like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
You know how I feel about
to
Southern Italians. Come on now.
Yes, I know. Yes. No, but I'm saying like to unite under a singular ideology, that the ideology takes adherence over your singular tribal ethnic spirituality or belief.
I think
There
most.
needs to be an all-encompassing ideology that people can unite under, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that unition. I'm just going to coin that word real quick. That unition. That unition occurs when everyone has a common survival impetus, and each person trying to survive as their own in one group is obviously what's needed right now. No one's saying that that Ireland should fight its own fight without backing from the rest of Europe. No one's saying that Germany should fight its own fight without backing from the rest of our people. No one's saying that Denmark should fight its own fight with those regions should remain intact, but we should all be together.
Another good example is that, like, if we're going to take it kind of into the modern lens, I mean, look at National Socialist Germany when they were fighting the last World War. You had certain countries like Spain who they actually ended up aiding during their own civil war. Who didn't even come to back them up when it counted. So many nations, especially in like what was it, like Denmark, or I forget which, Finland was another one, I believe, that didn't help at all in terms of helping National Socialist Germany when they were actually under invasion. This is what I'm trying to say,
Oh,
is that there
I
needs
would say that that was not a European influence. That was an external influence enacting
no,
on the
well,
leaders of Europe.
Finland was looking out for their own interest. It was like, this is what I'm trying to. This was what Yaki was talking about. Is this nationalism is what ended up hurting Europeans in the long run, because they put their national identities above collective European interests, and this is what I'm against. People need to put aside their national fucking pride and interests, and and trade that in for something that's greater. That's your race, that's your people. And I know certain regions have more cohesion than other regions, but my point's still withstanding. So yeah, I don't think hyper nationalism is going to save people anytime soon. So
Well,
Well,
to make a
oh, go
really
ahead.
quick distinction to what I was saying, when I mentioned multiple tribes and leaders for those tribes, and aligning that with our evolutionary history,
Yes.
and
That's what we're talking about. Leaders.
yeah, and and aligning that with our evolutionary history and the fact that leaders function best in smaller units. Uh, and you can also get more in touch with people, and following Dunbar's number of, you can know about 150 people really, really well. I was speaking about tribes and multiple tribes and leaders for those tribes as an organizational structure, not as a as what is unifying us, because what is unifying us should be our biospirit, and we are developing a sense of our biospirit, which World War II, as a European brother war, aided us in doing. It was one of the greatest tragedies our people have gone through, and we can turn that tragedy and make it fuel our understanding of our biospirit and of ourselves as one people, a European people with many countries or many tribes. So
What's funny?
it's
I saw on
basically like if
Twitter.
we
I saw on
it's
Twitter.
basically it's
Well,
basically like if
here.
hold on a second, hold on.
Oh,
It's basically like if we had a uncucked actual European Union that was run by Europeans and not
yeah.
Jews.
That's actually what I was going to bring up.
mm,
On Twitter, there was a recent rundown, a poll that was done, giving a breakdown of like what do you want to see in Europe. And the majority of people, I think the poll had about 7,000 at the time that I saw it, somewhere around there, said a united Europe with their own defined nationhoods, ethnicities, and groups combined in a common effort, as opposed to the UN, which is just a melting pot of Europe. Let's just face it, a melting pot run from an external group for Europe. So yeah, I thought that was really enlightening, in terms of many people's instinctive drive is they want their own space, they want their own ethnicity to maintain pure, they want their own ethnic group and their own heritage and their own traditions to remain intact, but they do want to combine, um, to defeat what we're seeing.
Yeah, and real quick too, to address Snowjilfer in the chat. I don't speak that language, so I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. But he said the collective Rome really worked out well for European folk. Well, actually, Rome did last a pretty long time, first of all, and number two, we're kind of living in one of the most powerful empires the world has ever seen, being the American Empire, which I'm not a fan of at all by any means. But to kind of dismiss the power that imperiums or empires have in the stage of world history would be foolish, in my opinion, to dismiss that and act like it's some meek, weak entity, which it's not. It actually drives history, whether we like it or whether we like the empire that we're a part of or not. It still drives history. And
I would say it's not something to ignore.
I know, but I was gonna say though, before you interrupted, I was gonna say if we had a European, especially like a European model that has never been seen, especially in modern times, that was actually running the show, that would be preferential to anything that has ever existed before. And I know we're kind of waxing poetic here, kind of playing God and just brainstorming whatnot. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't take those cards off the table in terms of kind of theorizing some of the stuff we're talking about, so to speak.
I would say this. I think reading the rise and decline of the Roman Empire and comparing that to European history and comparing that to other empires that have existed in past, empires do have a set in history. This is what I look at. They have a set expiration date. So even if you were to create an empire, it'd still have a set expiration date, just along with some of the great writers of the early Germanic Romanticism.
Unless we complete the idea, German idealism.
But I would say even he understood that there's subsects and there's different tribes that have their own ethnicity and their own makeup. This was something that even was written about actually by an author named, actually a few authors that spoke of Germanic Romanticism, Van Leest, Rudd Mills. There's a lot of people that went into this topic, and they said, to paraphrase, there is a Teutonic, there is a northwestern European vibe, or even a European vibe if you want to take a broader approach. But the true delineation is the impact and the ability and the want to survive as your own group supersedes even that of an empire. The empire is short-lived. The people are forever.
Yeah, but if you break the wheel and complete the cycle, then you can get that 1,000-year empire.
That's still an expiration date.
It is. No, I'm not disagreeing with you in terms of the cyclical nature of empires. I agree that there's definitely seasons, but like I said, it would be preferential that we are on the top and not the other way around. Like what we're living
100%.
in this.
Well, I think
we're living in this kind of anti-white, anti-European empire right now. We're basically living under Jewish occupation.
Exactly. So, we haven't lived in a Europe without foreign control in how long now?
Yeah, what was it since?
Well, I'll just go ahead.
Maybe like the 40s, 50s. I mean, because
I'll go ahead and
people
say the 300 to 400 ADs during the Northern Push.
I was talking about. I mean, if you're kind of discounting, the Reich, I guess. But I mean, there's a lot of other time periods.
Obviously. Obviously, I have nothing bad to say about those guys. I don't have much bad things to say about them.
I don't know. I would have to disagree with you. I think there's been even times between those two time periods where Europeans were running things before Jews started to infiltrate into the power structures of society within Europe.
Monarchs given by gods and debt and
you're talking about spiritual occupation. So that's I guess I could agree with you on that then.
Yeah, that's what
we're talking about. Christianity. Okay, I get what you're saying. Oh yeah, then I would agree with that. I would agree with that aspect. Grizzly was thinking metaphysical, and I was thinking materialist.
My head always goes to the metaphysical and the deep dive.
Mine usually does too, actually, especially a lot more lately. Like I said, most people in these circles, they focus solely on the material, and then they're left scratching their heads wondering what they're going to do and how they're going to fix things. And it's like they fail to realize if you don't have some sort of metaphysical foundation, then you're not going to kind of find that motivation or that spark that drives you, that drives your life, that drives your will for existence. And I think that's something that our side thrives at tenfold more than even the Christians do. So I will say the one thing that Christians have over us and over most pagans is that they're way better at collectivizing, way better at working together. Even the different denominations, I've seen different denominations of Christians who disagree on a lot of other shit, are able to come together for other certain things. But
Well,
like
that's
I said, I think we have a far superior metaphysics than they do, and that's our advantage. But our weakness is the individualism aspect, or the this hyper tribalism of, oh, I'm gonna focus on my tribe, you focus on your tribe, and it's all gonna all work itself out in the end. Like that's naivete.
well,
So
what allows those Christians um, to function with that uh, at that highly cooperative level, even among different denominations, is the one master principle. They've got one master. We also have one master. The problem is we haven't recognized it, and we can have our tribes, we can have our ethnic groups and interests, but once Europeans realize and fully awake to the understanding that we are one people with one biospirit, and they'll understand that what's good for your ethnicity is what's good for Europeans, then it'll all make sense, and we will be under that one master principle. What's good for Europeans is what's good for every ethnic group. Your ethnicity, no matter what your ethnicity is, your distinct European ethnicity is not going to exist without Europeans existing, without the well being of all other Europeans. That's the biospiritual understanding that we are cultivating. And unfortunately, even after 2 world wars, after 2 brother wars, we have not understood that. And part of that is because we are infected with anti European programming, anti European diseases.
yeah, we need to sap every foreign element of foreign ideology and poison that has kind of thrust itself upon European peoples, whether that's metaphysical or material. Every foreign ideology, every foreign spirituality, every foreign temple, every foreign church, every foreign person, these are things that are detrimental to the existence and the survival of European, not just European people, but our spirit and our culture and everything that we have built up until this point, our history, everything. So
Yeah, and it begins within our European mind. It begins within our collective consciousness, because the only way that we are going to do what is best for us is if we believe that we are worthy of that and deserving of that. But we're like a kid who's been put into, who has grown up with abusive parents, always telling us things that harm our potential, telling us that we're not the best, telling us that we're inferior to the other kids, telling us all manner of lies, all manner of mental viruses. And we have to remove those mental viruses, those anti European mean pathogens first. We have to once again start believing in ourselves. It's the only way to replace all of that bad programming with positive pro European programming.
some wise person in the chat just said Aryan Imperium. I second that notion. Yeah, if you're not subscribed, by the way, to Arianism on Telegram, I highly recommend subscribing to that channel. It's one of the best ones on Telegram right now. So if you're on Telegram, make sure to check out Arianism.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great channel. Also, I mean, Talia's doing really good work and kind of trying to do that broad picture that you're talking about, Will. She's doing a great job at that. Also, you know, she's also part of like a network of kind of folkish movements surrounding education for your own children and getting them connected to their ancestry, their past, their traditions, their heritage, their history. She's doing a really good job at that as well. But I saw something in chat that I know Promethean will like. Remove the mind parasite infection first. What does that mean to you?
That means that you can't, that means that the gigantic elephant who thinks that he can't break his chains won't break his chains if he believes it. So much of what we do is based off of belief. How are you supposed to do something that you don't believe you can do? You're not going to be able to. Removing the mental viruses first means that we cleanse ourselves of these anti-European lies, of these things that we were never meant to believe, these things that are not true, these things that hold us back from fulfilling our potential.
Exactly. Can I just respond to Noib Bayon? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, but you said it's hard to get Europeans to get on board with this way of thought, though. They hold on to old grudges. I think of these ideas as Americans. You know, this is why I rail against 1776ism and bulldog nationalism in England and IRAism in Ireland. We
Even anti-Italian sentiment, though.
you can hold on to a little bit of that, but I think we all have a
We
little.
won. We
soft
won,
spot.
Grizzly. Let it go. We won. It's
Who's
okay.
we? Who's we? No, just kidding. But I will say, one way to do that is to, I mean, the common denominator of all living things on this earth is survival. And when you have a group of individuals working in that effort, in that direction, it is the single most worthwhile approach and impetus. If you can get them beyond this whole idea of petty nationalism, as I would call it, modern nationalism, as I would call it, us hating Britain, Britain hating Ireland, Scots hating England, the the English hating Poland. Get that beyond it and just bring it really down to brass tacks. Survival is the brass tacks. If we do not help each other to do that, no one of our nations, no one of our individual ethnic people will survive. I mean, think of the alternative.
And the work of a leader will be to guide our people into that understanding, into the understanding that what's good for one European ethnic group is good for other European ethnic groups. The work of a leader is taking the interests of everyone, whether in a tribe, in the ethnicity, or the race, and aligning everyone's little individual interests and making them realize that not only can their interests fit, their interests are inextricably linked.
Exactly. Think of the power of just individual ethnic groups of Europeans that had that necessity to survive. Just think of that power. And then imagine that across the entire continent and the diaspora of Europe. That is a
So Grizzly is
God-sent
pro-Aryan.
power.
Grizzly is pro-Aryan Imperium, then, for the record.
Well, qualifier, still maintain your own ethnic traditions, groups, heritage, history, livelihood, love.
Oh yeah, that's a given. Like I said, nobody that I know that talks about this concept is pro melting pot of mixing all the European cultures and ideologies together. Like, that's not the goal. It's actually the opposite of that, is to preserve all of them.
Exactly. And even if you want to, even if you have the mindset of dividing into tribal groups, the end goal is still connecting all those tribal groups together in the cause of a common enemy. And your own self-preservation and your own lineal preservation, your own people's preservation, your own continent's preservation.
Also, we might be getting a special guest here very shortly, so just letting you guys know.
Well, I don't know exactly how long I have. By the way, this was supposed to be a
that's okay.
Short one.
They know we're not planning on going like super long, but they're just gonna come on for like a little bit. I think you won't mind when you see who it is, Grizzly.
I mean, I never mind any of our guests. That's why they're our guests. Promethean, is there any more of your notes that you wanted to necessarily get out?
well, when it deals with the Eurosphere, and the most important thing here is bringing it back to us, because we're the ones who need the leaders. We want people who mingle among their peers. We want people who rise organically, like we've been saying, emerge from the group, because those are the people that we can count on. Those are the people that we can hold accountable. And a leader is always going to be someone who knows that.
Grizzly, check chat real quick. Somebody's waiting to come in.
No, Boomer Grizz at it again. Hold on.
And
There's going to be another guest too, by the way. There's going to be 2.
Oh, heavens.
Oh, it's fine. Okay, continue, Lisa. Sorry.
God.
I just had to interrupt because I know if I don't, Grizzly's not going to check the fucking thing. Because, like, he had me waiting in there for like 10 minutes.
Note to self, check private chat.
Yeah.
But, well, the point is, you want someone who mingles among the people. You want someone who puts people in the spotlight. A leader doesn't hoard the spotlight of people. A leader puts people in the spotlight, gives them credit, shows gratitude, highlights them for their efforts. And there's really one person who is definitely a leader in our sphere, and that's Jason Kuna, No White Guilt. He does this all the time. He hands out credit where credit is due. That is another key trait of a leader. A leader is grateful for his people. He highlights the efforts of his people. He keeps an eye on his people. He mingles among them from the lowest to the highest. He's not afraid to be seen among those that others would scoff at.
Yeah, he makes effort to spend time and to actually get to know the people he intends to lead, and he leads from the front, not from the top.
Precisely, that was beautifully said. He leads from the front, not from the top. Yeah, exactly. He spends time with his people. He gets to know them intimately. A leader loves his people. Truly, a leader loves his people, and he leads with that love. That love is his weapon. But a leader must also be realistic in understanding that he has, like we mentioned before, that burden of performance. So if the leader is not succeeding, well, he has to know that he's going to be replaced. And that's just the natural order of things. So when it comes to us and the Eurosphere, we like our leaders when they're doing good things for us. The moment they do something anti-white, we rip them the hell down. Well, we also, of course, we question to make sure if what they did was intentional or not. Was it something that they did that was anti-European by mistake? We get to the point of that. We find the answer. But we like them when they're doing pro-European things. We dislike them when they're doing anti-European things. Because leaders can be compromised. They can be compromised, and they can be compromised without you knowing about it. So for us and for our protection, we have to judge them by results, and we got to take it one by one. It has to be detached in that kind of way.
Well said. I completely agree with that. Also, we have another. We have Grizzly. Hold on. We have another person in the waiting room. So.
Oh, come on now.
Speaking of guests, though, it's look who decided to join us for the evening.
Oh heaven! What's up, guys?
What's up, man?
Hey, it is.
Hey. Well,
He's
I was
back.
on, but I couldn't.
Can everybody hear me?
Hopefully this helps rather than hurts.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and also Dagus. Whenever you are around me, I feel butterflies in my heart, stomach, and soul. You always help me.
Do your ball
Nice.
drop too? Just messing.
What's the agenda for tonight, gentlemen?
Leadership.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I'm moving up in the world.
So what did you two, since you guys wanted to jump on it, was there anything that maybe you guys heard that you had some takes on or had some points, maybe points of contention or?
In regards to leadership, no, I just I recently had a pretty good laugh when I found out corporations were selling underage fucking kids on their websites. That's nice.
Well, it's
fucking
definitely
Wayfair. Wayfair of all places.
Yeah, that's definitely not surprising. I mean, I guess it's part and parcel of
it's bold.
The times.
Yeah.
It's bold. It's very bold, I'll say that much. But I guess I'm more so expected something like that to be on Wish.com.
Yeah, that is pretty.
Yeah, they'll pick up and move somewhere else. I mean, they'll shut it down and then set up the operation. There are a million other ways.
Now,
there's always Tel Aviv for them to go back to. So I mean,
yeah. Oh, they always have a homeland. Something that we all wish for in the end.
Jeffrey Epstein, pedophile leader.
Any topics regarding Christianity, though? That's what I'm always here for.
Well, we definitely did a brief stint of giving the old 1-2 to that old slave morality.
How about
nice.
I have something that maybe can tie into Christianity in sorts, but I don't know how long you were listening to this stream, but we were kind of talking earlier about some of the issues we see with modern paganism and how to maybe cultivate something that would be able to compete with these kind of monolithic Abrahamic religions.
That's actually a good statement / question in a way. If you want my take on that, I don't think everybody's going to immediately come back to native European religion in the sense that, they're doing rites, rituals, chants, and, it's not going to work like that. Realistically speaking, in terms of any practical aim you're trying to reach, you need something very fluid and not solid. Fun person to mention is Blair Cottrell. I love the guy. I love his content. What a fucking leader. That's everything you'd want in a political leader, right there. Huge, buff dude, blonde hair, blue eyes, nothing better.
Stop talking about me.
Represent, right? No. He said something very vague, but that was sort of the point. Is that if what you're proposing, excuse me, is too concrete in regards to the aim you're trying to sort of reach, people are going to be dissuaded by that. You're not going to have, your esoteric Hitlerist imperium off the bat. It's just not going to go that way. What I've really been infatuated with with ideas for sort of a religious community is William Luther Pierce's cosmotheism, because it's vague enough to pull people away from prostrating at the feet of some filthy kike and get them into a better headspace for native European. It's a process. Not everybody accepted Christianity off the bat, and you're not going to get everybody to revert back to what they were doing. It's sort of like a workplace, it's like a schedule change.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of appealing components to Pierce's spiritual ideology that he kind of put forth. And to kind of get back to what you're saying, I definitely agree with you in the sense of trying to make esoteric Hitlerism as a ever expanding this kind of a monolithic world ideology for Aryans in and of itself would be futile. But that's the thing, is that's why there's esoteric and exoteric. You keep the esoteric for the inner people, and you give the normies something a little more easy to chew on and digest. So I agree with you in that sense. And yeah, there's definitely a few ideologies that can kind of encompass that train of thought, in my opinion. Like we were kind of talking about earlier, is that the Aryanism concept, and I don't believe that necessarily puts esoteric Hitlerism at the forefront for people to digest.
Yeah, no. The problem with the title area. Sorry, I've been fucking out and about all day and some shit.
Yeah, no worries.
Literal shit. Anyways, so the problem with Aryanism is quite literally the title of Aryanism, because when people think of Aryanism, even to normies, when you're sort of trying to approach them through an academic perspective, is that the first thing they reference is Nazi Germany. That's going to be the first thing they think of. They're going to think that's blonde hair, blue eyes, and obviously they're going to be uneducated on the subject, and they're going to reject it, because that's what people do. Is they have sort of these spring-loaded phrases that they unknowingly program themselves with, or others have programmed within them. A lot of people will say things before they think about it, and I still do that too, especially with smaller things, and just in regards to any opinion I have about, oh, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Oh, shut the fuck up, it's that's the response you're going to get when you try to approach it, and that's why I don't see. Especially even groups going back to leadership, you're not going to do the whole Rockwell theatrics. You're not going to get away with it. You're just not. You're not going to be able to fly swastikas. You're not going to be able to do all this stuff. What a wonderful world that would be, but that's not the way you're going to go. And what I always propose in terms of practicality is no names, no symbols, and this works for so many different groups, not even just lobbyists and what have you. It's because they have a hard time attaching something to your face. Like, for the example, just to give you an example, the mob, they didn't call themselves the mob. None of them call themselves the mob. They're just dudes. They're just sitting in the bar. You'll never know who they are. It's just court cases. They're like, oh, that's the mob. And what it really comes down to is, again, being fluid in your approach and not having anything so concrete as to where your ideas are so formed in the sense that people are going to be rejecting them. And that's exactly how Hitler took advantage of Weimar conditions, although his ideas were a little more specific for the time because people wanted something like that. Mason, I've been listening to fucking Siege very recently. I needed to refresh myself on it. He makes a good point about people's social conditions, and that at the time they desired a state of existence within their own desired sovereignty. And now people have been bred to love subservience. They don't understand anything outside of it. Anything outside of it is just an abstraction. They don't.
Are you kidding me?
They're not.
We're just talking about leadership. I mean, imagine just the desire just to serve. What can be above that?
Yeah.
Nothing, obviously.
Well, that's how people are, and
Also,
I don't think. Sorry to cut you off, just really quick. I don't think serving is such a bad thing. I think everybody wants to be the next Führer, and everybody has these very grandiose visions of how they want their perfect world to be. It's just not going to be the way they want it to be. People have a hard time, sort of. What's the word I'm looking for? Shutting the fuck up and just doing what the fuck you're told. I'm just going to be really honest.
I would agree with that. And to another point you made too, I don't think anybody here is thinking that people are going to be waving swastika flags around anywhere anytime soon either. But
just for
also
viewer content.
Yeah.
Some people watching probably might have that idea. I've met a few of them. It's not very intelligent.
Yeah, that's cringe if people think that's going to be some sort of normality here. But also, I was going to say shout out to my boy Skinny in chat, since he's hardly around these live streams.
Well, let's just be honest. He is my son. He is my son.
No, he's actually mine.
I'm gonna hop off in a minute though, but tomorrow, if you guys do anything tomorrow, I'll be able to do that. I'm not gonna be available. The page is probably not gonna be available for a good, I want to say,
Well,
Well, you
maybe
should
2 weeks.
you should come on next week. Your buddy Dringer will be here too, and it'd be good to have you guys
I
come and
won't be
shoot the
back.
shit.
I won't be back until Thursday. I won't be back until Thursday at all.
Yeah.
well,
if you,
one
if you
thing.
want, you're more than welcome to come back and chat when you do. So.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
COWG, you're always welcome to come in and hang out.
Yeah, no, I got to do a trip, backcountry kind of shit, building
Well,
bridges and all
good.
that.
Go back to
Oh,
nature. I implore you.
Yeah, I love going back to nature when I'm surrounded by a fucking bunch of mudskins. But hey, can't have everything, right?
Well,
Yeah, good conversation. I just, for anybody thinking in terms of practicality, anybody wanting to formulate something, don't think too hard about it, and try not to make it so constructive as to where people cannot perceive it and understand it.
well, that's the whole topic.
I
Is don't
agree.
overthink
I completely agree with that.
Don't
sentiment.
overthink it. Just act, and then those that will follow will follow. That was the fundamental idea of the origin of this chat, was the definition of leadership, and the definition of leader is, or to lead is the impetus, is the starting point, is the one who doesn't need to look back.
Absolutely. I'm gonna hop off here though. Nice talking to you boys.
Yeah,
You too.
thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Have a good
I'll
one.
hop on next week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good, dude.
All
See
right,
ya.
man.
Yeah, have a good one.
Now, this wasn't meant to be a long conversation. Actually, it was one of the shorter ones. But since we have a large portion of the panel here, Dagus, did you listen to a lot of what we were talking about?
I heard a few parts. I didn't really disagree with either sides of it. I think what am I thinking of specifically? I didn't hear you guys talk about leadership as more like when we started going into the nature of nationalism versus something that's potentially broader than nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys already know. I think you guys already know my thoughts on that one. I've been trying to kind of push the envelope a little bit with getting out of the mindset that the nationalism itself is going to be the be all end all for us. That if we all just get a bunch of European nations to become more nationalist, we're going to win this thing. And I really don't think it's going to be that. I really don't think that that's going to be enough.
Well, pragmatically and practically speaking, that's like rooting for Poland and Hungary, while at the same time not necessarily even taking into consideration your own area of the world, and also just longing for it while they're just pursuing their own ends. The
Also,
alternative would
there's
be
no such thing as
nationalism is like rooting for your soccer team in a sense. I mean, I know that homeland is a bigger thing, but this like soccer teams are like how Europeans express their nationalism in this day and age. And I know that Poland, doing its thing with the flares and whatever is epic and whatnot, but ultimately any of these individual nations trying to stand on their own is going to get crushed. Hungary trying to be based with even it's a good leader like Orban is just going to get totally fucking steamrolled on its own. We've got to develop something in some way where we're able to have each other's backs and protect each other from the global onslaught that we're up against.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as Dagus in that sense. It's kind of like I was saying earlier, this kind of hyper nationalist sentiment, and it transcends the material, and it definitely gets into paganism. That's why we're kind of talking about it in the first place. Is people get super regional, and they say, oh well, you're 20% this or 50% this, so therefore you have to go to this pantheon. It gets super autistic and unproductive. So
yeah, I've also had this thought recently, and I'm not totally sold on it yet. So don't start lining up your shots to shoot me down just yet. But I've been kind of floating this idea that is it is it possible that part of the reason that the pagans got sort of replaced in the first place, that they sort of got pushed out of existence, was that they didn't have a way to like the universalism was lacking in paganism. Was that potentially some reason that this massive force of Christianity was able to sort of replace it, because it was all a bunch of singular tribes up against this monolith? And is
I mean,
go ahead.
I'll just say everything does. This is something I brought up earlier. Everything does start at the person, the family, the kin, the ground in which the kin lived and died on, and in the past, and then it broadens outwards. I don't think there needs to be a compromise between the two. This is why I don't understand any disagreement with what I'm saying. You must maintain a tribal nature. You must. This is a necessity. At the same time, you must have a common defense and a common procurementship of survival in a group form. I also don't hesitate to say that.
Is there any point where you'd put aside your tribalistic tendencies for survival, or for the greater survival of Europeans as a whole? Would you be willing to put those kind of tribal differences aside for
that? I mean, nothing that I just said would counter what you just asked me.
Well, that's good. I think that's a good answer. I'm glad to hear that. And that's the thing, is like most people, I shouldn't say most people, I should say a percentage of pagans probably wouldn't be willing to do that, because like I said, I've been listening to a lot of other pagans recently, and I've gotten the complete opposite sentiment from them in terms of being willing to put sort of this sort of a tribal ethnic belief system aside for this kind of greater European survival. Because they're more hyper focused on their own.
I do get this sense from certain pagan groups where it's like, my pantheon of gods is the best. And it's kind of, to me, that is kind of cringy on the same level of like, Liverpool versus Leeds soccer games or something. Like, it is like just being in the position of just rooting for your team and not seeing the broader picture is like something that I see as a weakness, not a strength. I'm not trying to become, some super globalist here or whatever, but I do think that we need an ideology that permeates national borders and specific ethnic groups and specific linguistic groups. We need something that's a little bit broader, that connects all the children of Europe together.
Yep. I'm in complete agreement with that. Here, since we're kind of talking about this, I mean, a good example would be a lot of the shit that Varg pushed for so long. Like, I know a lot of people like to say he was being ironic and stuff in some measures, but he really wasn't being ironic in a lot of the stuff he was saying as well about his kind of hyper tribalism and anti, other different European ethnicities, because they weren't pure enough in his mind, which is a whole other conversation in and of itself. But that's kind of the sentiment that we're kind of getting at here, is this: a lot of pagans, especially ethnocentric pagans, kind of hold this mindset that I feel is going to be to the absolute detriment of their survival in the long run if they don't evolve their mode of thinking, or their way of thinking, rather.
Yeah, I still like Varg for a few reasons, but I'd say on that stuff he is way off the mark. And I think that what you see with Varg is he did develop into his own sort of like tremendous alpha male, but ultimately he did it in a way where he didn't develop any sort of leadership or community building abilities. I don't think that even on the internet Varg has his own community. I think that he really truly is a lonely, isolated individual, even with legions of fans or whatever. He's off in the north coast of France, and he and his wife, have their little homestead. But is there any broader community there, or is he just, living in the middle of this spot and he's sort of thought of as the psycho crazy neighbor that no one wants to talk to? And is there anything that he's doing that's going to that's kind of, I don't know, like last? I guess what I'm, the way that I think of this stuff is, if you're going to go and do the homesteading thing or go off into rural parts of your country and try to set up, ultimately you shouldn't be just focused on your individual property. It should, and not just your immediate family, but also trying to build up a community around you that is going to think the same way that you do and act as a collective, become a tribe. And I don't, as much as Varg has done with his life, I don't think he's even began on that project. I don't think he's accomplished that whatsoever.
I mean, he has inspired a lot.
Hard agree with Dagus.
He's inspired a little bit, probably more than anyone really knows, and probably to the degree that they've pursued their own families in the same direction. That pursuit of living off the land or living in your own community or creating your own tribe is not necessarily an evil or a bad thing. If you're going to participate in a collective survival effort, I will say this. I think we can do a very long chat on this, but I think one of ours is going to be having to go to sleep soon. Same thing with me, but let's give closing remarks and then end it for tonight and pick it up at another point on the same topic.
Real quick, too, one comment I wanted to read off in the chat is from Talia. She said, that's because they're not doing Aryan ancestral veneration. They're jumping straight to the pantheon, and they're missing the nature of true paganism. And I agree with that statement as well.
I think if you throw the baby out with the bathwater in general, with people pursuing their own ends in family, for one thing, don't pretend that some of our guys are not venerating their ancestors. There's many that are. So saying that is wrong. So don't necessarily just think that. I think a lot of people who are pursuing this path are creating a lot of children, and I think that's really positive. I think in the end we're all looking for the same thing. This is my closing remark, by the way, because I'm one of those people that have to hit the hay because there's a young person looking for my attention. But in the long run, as long as you're doing that and looking out for the survival of your immediate tribe and extending that outwards, I think that's the important thing. It's not just being as Will said in the past, going to the woods and maintaining your own survival for the sake of your own survival. That's not what we've even talked about in this chat. What we've talked about is leadership. And leadership in the truest definition of what we've just talked about is leadership towards the survival of everybody of your kin. And that's the true leadership.
Grizzly, just let me jump in real quick and say I agree with the underlining spirit of the message that you and Lusos put forth of leadership. I do. I agree with those sentiments. But in terms of offering actual, like, how do I say, practical kind of solutions, that's what people are missing from this. And I'm not saying from you specifically, I'm saying just in general, like when we're kind of looking around and trying to figure out how to address some of these issues, that's, people are kind of left scratching their heads like, okay, we love our people. We, some, like you said, a lot of them do have families, and that's true. They love their people. They have families, yet they're still getting blackballed from the system and stuff. And this is what I'm saying is,
I think we're discussing two different topics, but with the same outcome. I think it's not a bad thing for that to exist. Those people who are into their own kin and into their own tribes. The only difference that we're saying, which I've already said time and time again that I agree with, is having a broader approach to the survival concept. And that's where the whole leadership kind of concept got brought up. Was leaders who understood that there's a tribal nature to our people and it must maintain because without that, you don't have individual groups fighting for their own survival. Actually and factually, you're not going to unite enough people without that tribal mindset. I'm sorry, but you're not. At the same time, the alternative of just remaining tribal and just remaining self-defensive is also equally bad. So there has to be a balance, and that
There
balance
has
is
to
what
be a third position on it. You have to have both. You have to have a synthesis of both, and I agree with that.
Yeah, that's my take, and I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I'll just reiterate it now. Before I go to bed, it is a must to maintain that tribal nature, and it starts with yourself and then your family, and then it extends outward. If you don't have a family or a kin to talk of, it's less of a consideration for yourself. Well, I'll just say this. I think the stronger approach is it goes from self and maintaining your own fucking survival capabilities, and then it goes to the family, and then it extends outward to your entire European family, and that's what's important. But it maintains the facts that you must maintain a family structure, you maintain a kin, maintain a kiss, maintain a tribal nation, maintain a tribalhood, but also have a defensive mechanism that combines all of them together. That is not even remotely, I mean, for most people, that's not even debatable. I mean, if you really want to get into it, that's not debatable for a lot of people who want to maintain their own heritage and ethnicity and their own traditions and their own people. Like, you need that. That's essential, because that leads to the whole definition of leadership in terms of love that Lusos has spoken about. Without that, you don't have much.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with the cultivation of the self and the family unit at all. I think that's one of the main ingredients and components to making this whole system work as a whole. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, let's. I think this is a topic that's even broader than the concept of leadership. So we should rebroach this topic. But for
yeah,
now, I think
maybe we should plan like another episode like in advance where like we can deep dive this topic, kind of paganism in general, and we can deep dive the issues and like some of the things we can see as possible solutions for it.
Yeah, of course. I think that's 100% needed. I didn't know it would turn into a broader concept, but generally it was about leadership as a whole, as a concept. So let me start the wrap up and say, Promethean, do you have any more in your notes, or ending just an ending concept or an ending point that you want to make?
The conclusion would be that leadership is a skill. It is a skill that is in high demand for our people. People are always looking for leaders. And some people are born with predispositions for leadership, but it's still a skill, and you can develop that skill. And there will always be people who want to follow, and there will also be people who want to lead. But at the moment, in our sphere, in those who care about the existence, the excelling, and the evolution of the European peoples, there are not enough real leaders. So, yes, go out there. If you think you are one, take action. But don't think for a second that it's not a skill. Don't think for a second that it's not something that you're going to have to place effort into. Don't think for a second that it's something related to fame or getting you status or getting you power. Think of it as service. It's a service. And don't think for a second that you're not going to have to sweat your ass off to master it. It's a skill that branches off into other skills. You're going to need a lot. You're going to need to put your ego to the side. You're going to need to adapt. You're going to need to be someone who is capable of learning. You're going to need to be someone who's capable of service. You're going to need to be someone who's capable of sacrifice. But if you do that, it's going to be hard. It's probably going to be the most difficult thing that you do in your life. But if you do it, you'll benefit the most from it.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Those great words, and appreciate you coming on, Lisa. You always have some good insight and good dialogue and conversations when you come on. So thanks for coming on.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the invite. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe get you on next week again as well. And I was going to say too, before we do our last final words, because people were asking the last few weeks about the Thilian chat on Telegram. If anybody in chat here, who isn't already in the chat, wants to get in, tag one of us or let us know, and we'll get you the link for the chat. So, but yeah, go ahead, Grizzly, and you can finish closing it out.
Well, I think Lucis said as best as I can say. But I look forward to speaking to everyone again. Thank you for everyone watching. Thank you for Promethean coming on, and I look forward to the next time.
Well, you guys take care. Have a great night, everyone in chat and everyone watching this in the future. Stay safe and lead your people.
Yeah.
Good night.
Have a good one, guys.
Right.